In this video we will be taking a look at an alternative WICSO scenario where New Persia wins the Persindian civil war. We begin in episode 22. The Arabian colonies of the Persindian Empire have just declared their independence. In our timeline, Persindia responds to this with an invasion, where they committed genocide to the Arabian citizens. This created a very bad view of the Persindian oligarchy. However, in this timeline, while Persindia does still invade the land, they only fight the military of the young nation, and leave the people alone. This makes it so a huge stain on the Persindian government never happens, which will be important later on. Next, we move on to episode 25. It is here where in our timeline we saw the Chilean and Chinese colonies forcefully break away. Here the government takes a different approach, allowing them to peacefully split off and maintaining good relations with the nations. The reason they allow this is that they knew these colonies were planning independence anyway. Together, these two differences make a huge change. One of the four Indian oligarchs that broke away in our timeline decides to stay loyal to the core Persian land, which will drastically change this civil war. Now, you might be thinking, if the Persindian government is making better changes, why would the civil war even happen? Well, despite these changes, Persindia is still very unstable, and they still decide to join in on World War I. First, we see events similar to our timeline. Persindia makes great gains into Persia, liberating a large portion of the country. They then move down into Arabia. But then, the civil war takes place, a little later on than our timeline. The reason for this is that with only 3 oligarchs supporting the movement, it took a little longer to organize the movement, plus, the oligarchs were disagreeing on a major issue, which I will get back to in a minute. The outbreak of the civil war has a similar effect, of Persindia quickly being pushed back, but as they had more land, when they sign peace they still control land outside of their territory. They make a deal with the Triangle Alliance, where Persindia keeps control of Persia. This will help out Persindia a lot, as Persia will be helping them fight this war against India, seeing it as Persindia saving them from being annexed by Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, throughout the world, Persindia loses colonies. Alaska and Madagascar are annexed by the Dutch, and Indonesia, well, we will get back to Indonesia soon. Now, let's look at the civil war. In the first days of the war, we see India quickly consolidate into one front line, and they begin to push back Persindia, who at this point has renamed themselves to New Persia. Speaking of which, New Persia launches an offensive in the north, aiming to cut off Tibetan supply routes, as Tibet is supplying India. Now, let's talk about India, and the issue that I said they were having. One of the Indian oligarchs, seeing that they did not have enough support from the population in this war, as many people were beginning to warm up to the Persindian government, proposed an idea. Communism. An ideology that he thought would guarantee the support of the people. I mean, on paper, why wouldn't they support communism? It meant more rights for them. The only issue is that the other 2 oligarchs did not support this idea, as it meant they would lose their power. This causes something very bad to happen to India. A civil war, in a civil war. A communist faction breaks away from India, where the oligarch has control. The new Persian government, seeing this, is quick to sign a non-aggression pact with this new group, who I will be calling Nepal for simplicity. This greatly worries India. Due to this, India launches a new offensive, in an attempt to quickly destroy this new movement. They launch an offensive to quickly cut Nepal in half. This goes well, as Nepal was not a very strong nation. However, due to aid from New Persia they managed to survive in the west. To improve relations with the new group, New Persia grants all former land back to the Indian oligarch, as they are no longer worried about the Tibetan supply routes in that area. At this point, however, a big challenge arrives for New Persia. It happened in our timeline, and it is happening here. India completely militarizes their population. This causes great threat to New Persia, as India makes very large pushes in. Now the only issue with India doing this is that, because they are not as popular with the people in this timeline, this could cause revolts in India, as people are being dragged out of their homes to fight. Anyway, taking a break from India, we move to Indonesia. Here we see a different course of events happen than in our timeline. Instead of breaking away fully, some areas are granted independence peacefully. This allows New Persia to keep control of some vital areas, which will help in the war effort. Plus, in our timeline, the Persian military there had to fight the Indonesians, but as there is no war this time, this allows the new Persian military that is stationed there to return to India to fight the war. They make a landing in East India and cause major trouble for India, as they are now fighting essentially a three-front war. This allows Persia to make gains in the west again, and just in time too, as India had been approaching their capital. It is also at this time where Persia finally has their military ready, and they send it over, further helping the push. It is at this point where Persia makes the plan to cut India in two. This goes very well, and India is forced to retreat from up north, to the benefit of the communists. However, it is at this point where New Persia is finding it extremely difficult to move on, as these areas have high support for Indian independence. Due to this, New Persia and India reluctantly sign peace, as the war turns into stalemate, and people of both nations riot, wanting an end to the war. Now, let's take a look at the peace treaty. In this peace treaty, we see that even though New Persia won the war, they still lost a heavy amount of land. The two Indian oligarchs split up, and the communist Nepal gains independence too. Now, after the civil war, New Persia grants their remaining Indonesian land semi-autonomy, to keep them pro-Persian. During the Great Depression, New Persia struggles immensely, as they do not export as much anymore, which their economy heavily relied on. Now, in regards to World War II, I do not see New Persia joining, as the incentive to regain land is not there. Because of this, the square team still wins. Persia is also invaded here. Post-war, New Persia attempts to build relations with the old empire. Honestly, I am not too sure how this would go, but I could definitely see some trade deals between the two nations. In regards to the Cold War, I have very little idea of what would happen. Maybe Russia and the old empire stay allies, or maybe the cross team is never formed, as Caspia does not feel threatened by the old empire, as New Persia blocks them off. So, I will end the scenario here. If you guys have any suggestions of what might happen here, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe.